Hello gamers, my name is Duma and welcome to the Game Room. Today, I have something special for you. If you're new to the channel, one of the things we provide are adaptive builds and ways to play for those that may be a bit older, disfigured, disabled, have cognitive impairments, or whatever else that may be causing you to move a bit slower. We have 1-button builds, 2-button builds, compilations of every single class using only 1 to 2 buttons using the same gear, some one-handed stuff, and much more. These aren't just little nonsense setups. These are setups that have been thoroughly play-tested inside veteran content and have players out there right now clearing veteran dungeons, veteran arenas, some basic trials, and most other activities in the game within reason. Today, I've taken the best one out there that packs the most punch and the smallest kit, which is the 2-button Arcanist. Tore it down to the ground and rebuilt it in an all-new way with some secret sauce. Just so you can see there's zero clickbait in the thumbnail, here is the full final boss fight from Veteran Vateshran, where you can see there was 0 light or heavy attacks or ultimate use. Likewise, for St. Lothus, a 12-man trial boss in the Trial Asylum Sanctorium was able to be soloed, also using no light attacks, no heavy attacks, or ultimate. And the most insane part is, it was only 23 seconds slower than the most recent full 1-bar Immortal Nightblade solo setup. Absolutely wild, wild stuff. This also isn't me tryharding the build either and selling you snake oil here. I tried my best to simulate maybe what someone would play like who has some sort of physical limitations on their keyboard hand as well, and did my best to do short, choppy, small movements while also intentionally getting hit by damage sources to see how that would feel for you. Or just outright flat-footed, stood in fires and out-tanked it. It changed nothing. The build chopped through everything I put it against with ease. This build will open doors for a lot of activities for a lot of players, and I'm really excited to get to provide it to you. The written guide is up for you now over at thegameroom.tv if that helps you out as well. Okay, let's take a look. You can play this as any race in the game. A stamina-oriented race is better. If the race you have doesn't have any extra health racial bonuses, you want to put about 20 points into health here and the rest into stamina. We're using the Serpent Mundus coupled with Artaeum Takeaway Food. Before we get into gear, let me show you a bit behind the curtain so you can have an understanding of what's going on in the background as well. One of the things we are doing is stacking health recovery in places that doesn't pull down your damage, or at least minimally so. Some big takeaways: we have baseline health recovery, minor fortitude from Oakensoul, major fortitude from rolling tripods, our food, slotting the Sanctum of the Abyssal Sea ultimate to access the Wellspring of the Abyss passive, rejuvenation CP, and then the big razzle dazzle, the CP Strategic Reserve. This gives you scaling health recovery for how much ultimate you have. At max ultimate, we get a ton of health recovery. Altogether, this brings us to a crazy 3,627 health recovery. For reference of how strong this is every 2 seconds. So let's divide that by 2 to get the per second average, and we get about 1,814 health per second. Now let's look at the Restoration Staff skill line and the popular PvE healer ability, Radiating Regen, while also wearing a Restoration Staff. If we take this value at 16,404 and divide it by 10 to get our rough per second estimate, we get 1,640 health per second for the values that this build has. You literally turn yourself into your own pocket healer without pressing a button. Next, we have the Briarheart set, which procs constant weapon damage increases and heals. These heals can be increased by the Focus Mending CP, increasing Briarheart's effectiveness by 10%. Then we have Hexo Shields proccing constantly on their own. Your main spammable heals you on every press, even if there's no enemies, so it doubles as both a damage ability and a straight-up healing ability in a pinch that can be spammed. Your beam grants you a huge damage shield, and Briar can proc during your beam, flooding you with heals while shielded. And just for good measure, we top all that off with major protection, reducing the damage by 10% passively on our bars from Flare. This is borderline unreasonable amounts of defense that all happens passively while pressing 2 offensive buttons. You never have to really dedicate any thought at all to defense. Just keep your flails and beams going and the build will take care of the rest. There are no light attacks, no heavy attacks required, and you sit on your ultimate, never using it to keep the Strategic Reserve passive full. Okay, let's break this down into specifics. Since both sets are medium, it doesn't matter where you put what. Anything can go anywhere. Ideally, you want Divine Armor traits with max stamina and chance, Robust on jewelry, Infused is fine for Oakensoul if it's already set up that way, Weapon damage and chance on the jewelry, a Precise Lightning staff with the flame enchant in case you ever do want to throw out light attacks at some point. All of that's topped off with a heavy one-piece slime crawl monster set. Both of these sets are overland sets and can be bought on traders for very cheap and off traits. And slime crawl is from one of the easiest dungeons in the game. Everyone should have immediate access to this build, with the X factor being Oakensoul. For our skills, you have a flex spot of one fighter's guild ability that is only here for the passive Slayer for more weapon damage. I recommend this be Barb Trap, which I'll explain shortly why. Next, I recommend you keep Ring of Preservation on the bars as a second fighter's guild passive increase ability. The reason why is because if down the road you get used to the build and maybe decide you want to add an extra button, then this isn't a bad on-use AoE heal for you or your group, especially considering the whole point is to be a passive damage increase. But I did not have to use this ability a single time in anything I've done, not even close. Our main spammable Flail, every use of this gives you a crux indicated by the triangles orbiting your body, and you can have up to 3. Once you get 3, you use Fate Carver, the iconic Arcanist beam. So your rotation is 3 flails followed by beam and repeat forever. It never changes. The only time you really have to break that pattern is if you need to spam your flail for some heals in an emergency. I want to show you how fast you bounce back to full health after you've made a major mistake as well. Here we are in Veteran Maelstrom Arena. I ran around collecting these bleeds, let my health get low, and now I'm in trouble. Watch this. 1 flail and boom, recovered in 1 button. It's literally that easy. Next we have either Morph of Flare. This is only here for major protection, reducing damage taken. You never touch this. Last, we have our ultimate Abyssal Sea. This is a fantastic ult for you to have here, because if you get to the point where you say, okay, I'm ready for a 3rd button, let's add an ultimate here. This more or less gives you immortality for its duration. It's one of the best get out of jail and reset abilities in the entire game. But again, I did not use this a single time in anything I did. I just sat on it to keep the strategic reserve CP juiced. For CP, we have Focus Mending, Wrathful Strikes, Biting Aura, and Thaumaturge. In the red tree, Boundless Vitality, Fortified, Rejuvenation, and Strategic Reserve. With this setup as it is, there is no solo content in the entire game that is meant to be soloed that you cannot do easily on any difficulty. All that's left is you learning the mechanics of the content you're running. Also, I personally would take you to any veteran dungeon in the game using this build because I know you likely won't die and will contribute to the group's damage in a meaningful and relevant way. I do want to add this though, kind of a cool thing here. Let's say you are ready for a 3rd button. If you put Inspired Scholarship in the place of Flare, it's going to significantly increase your damage, and you don't need to press this button but once per 30 seconds. So very, very low requirement. The reason this is so strong is not only does it provide damage on its own, it changes your rotation to even simpler of 2 flails followed by beam rather than 3 flails followed by beam, which ends up much more damage over time. So if you can swing a 3rd button, you actually end up in less APM because you're sitting more time in beams. So it's kind of a weird way to think about it. You press less buttons by having an extra button, but you also don't need it at all if you don't want it. Now let's say you totally fell in love with the build. This is your thing. You want to fully embrace it with changing nothing with gear, CP, or anything other than a few abilities on the bars and add light attacks. This can easily maintain around 70k DPS on a dummy using these skills you see here, which is also why I suggested to leave Trap on the bars. Maybe so you can start messing around with it when you're ready. Boom, and it's that easy, gamers. I really hope this adds value to your game time. I'll leave you with a bit of gameplay so you can see it in action. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.